Right, we're on page 320.
And back to the perplexed.
Yeah.
I mean,
I wish.
God to serve God. Guy.
I wish we had a good translation of the guy for the perplexed.
I think the translations are all equally perplexing.
Yes.
There's an older one, there's also a somewhat newer one.
This is a very good translation, and the way it's laid out is excellent. This is what Norby, there may be hard to read.
The concepts there are also much heavier. V'hahistapkut, page 320. V'hahistapkut, contentment. Hi yesod v'shoresh lemidat ha'prishut, is the foundation and origin of prishut, abstinence. By the way, you notice this word histapkut? Does it remind you of any other word?
Hishtadlut.
What-
Hishtadlut.
Okay. What's the name of the book we're talking about? Hamaspik Le'ovdei Hashem.
Yeah.
What a servant of God can be content with following, observing. This whole book is about, it's very interesting. Everything you need to serve Hashem. That's why it's called the guide to serving God. But really, it's not called the guide. It's called Hamaspik.
Hamaspik.
The book which provides contentment in your service of Hashem. Rabbeinu Avraham, a son of his father, is not afraid of saying things that will get him in trouble. I wrote the book on how to serve God. Yeah, he's not afraid. Because he felt he was worthy of such.
And you're comparing that with contentment.
It is the same word. Meaning, hamaspik, sipuk, is contentment. So it's what you need to accomplish in order to be content that you are serving Hashem properly. That's the most. I guess that's why it wasn't such a catchy title, because it's a very long title. So the guide to serving God.
Guy.
And those of you who want to love Orthodox Jews very much, if you have a cover on your book, look at the word God. You don't have a cover on a dust jacket. Yeah, you see the O? Okay, look at the O in the hardcover.
It's meant.
It's like the dash.
Orthodox Jews have a phobia of writing Hashem's name. They also have this phobia of saying Hashem's name, which makes most Jews idol worshippers. Because when they sing off half their prayers, or they're always using fake names for Hashem. You go to someone's house, and instead of saying Ya Ribon Olam, Ya, who is the master of the world, they'll say Ka Ribon, Ka, who is the master of the world. Or you ask somebody, who created the heaven and earth? Elokim. Who is Elokim? Elokim is not Hashem. Bereshit bara Elohim. Elohim created in the beginning. So why are you so afraid? The only time you cannot say HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name is when it's in vain, when it's a joke, when it's redundant, when it's not necessary. But when you're saying about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of course say Hashem's name. Even Baruch Hashem. It would be better to come with a different word for that. But I can't change Jewish tradition. But what does it say in Tefillah? Baruch Adonai Yom Yom. Blessed is Hashem every single day. Hishtapkut, contentment, is the foundation. It's the origin of abstinence. Now, prishut is an interesting word. Prishut literally means to separate yourself from. Lifrosh. Al tifrosh min hatzibur, says the Mishnah. Do not separate yourself from the community. I recently spoke with a Jew who told me he's Jewish and he's going to follow Hashem. He has nothing to do with any Jewish community because they're all terrible. One tells you, I believe in Hashem and I serve Hashem and I don't need the Jewish people. I just can serve Hashem without the Jewish people. The early medieval philosophers of the Jewish people, they say that belief in Hashem is incomplete without belief in the Jewish people. Those two things are necessary in order to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You cannot just serve Hashem as an individual, you must serve Hashem with other people. Now, yes, are there communities that are not good for you? Absolutely. But it does not exempt you from either finding or creating a community around you which is good for you.
What about when the Rambam says that in extreme times, that one should separate oneself in the world and move out to the desert?
He's talking, one, about non-Jewish society, and it's under the assumption that you don't have any Jews to surround yourself with, which is a very extreme situation. No matter where you go, you're going to bump into some Jew somewhere. Prishut.
Maybe not
We
Saudi
are called
Arabia.
the Plushim. This synagogue is part of a much larger denomination of Jews known as the Plushim, otherwise known in English as the Pirushim, otherwise known as the Pharisees. You ever hear that word
Oh,
before?
right.
The study.
What does the word Pharisee mean?
Those who study the Torah.
Plushim.
Yeah.
Pharisees means those who are separate.
On anti-Semitic sites, they'll refer to Jews as Pharisees.
Again, yeah, in fact, the
Yeshua in the
Pharisees
New
of
Testament has an
temple.
obsession with us being
Right.
Plushim. Why do you always have to be different? Always separating yourself. You think you're so holy. That's what the Epikusim, the students of Epicurus, accused us of. You're separating yourself from this world, but you're not going to get anything in the next world, so why bother? We're Pharisees, and we're proud. Which is why if you meet a Jew who tells you he's against the oral law, well, you don't belong to this denomination, because even the most least observant group of Jews will observe Rosh Hashanah, but it's only because of the teachings of the Pushim that we know when Rosh Hashanah even falls out.
So Pushim is a Pharisee, and that means they're separate.
Yeah,
But it's not the same as ascetic.
no, very good. Abstinent and asceticism are not the same thing. We will have a
'Cause
whole chapter on abstinence.
in the West, the only time you hear the term abstinent is like when, they were telling high school kids to be abstinent.
Correct.
High school kids.
And that's why I'm saying even abstinence is
From
not a word.
alcohol, from
That abstinence is a word that comes already with preconceived notions. It would be better to just say the art of abstaining from things. Even though abstinence is abstaining,
Abstaining,
but
yeah.
it's just not to trigger that preconceived notion. What can we do?
Wait.
Shaar, yeah.
So you just said that it's not good to be separate, but then you have a group of people that are called
Are separate from this world. Meaning they don't find
gotcha.
themselves, their needs are fulfilled within Hashem, not within the physical needs of this world.
So Pushim is to be separate from this world.
Correct. Then the opposite of them were the epikosim, which today you use to refer to any Jewish heretic. Yeah, you're an epikoros, or you're an apikoros, they call it. But that's someone who doesn't know how to read Hebrew. Apikoros. And there was a man named Epicurus. He was a philosopher. Remember we mentioned Greek philosopher.
eat, drink, and be merry.
Yeah, I
for
gave a
tomorrow
class
we
about him
die.
in the summer. Yeah, eat, drink, be merry, for tomorrow we die. That's a good summary of that. And this, essentially, the Chachamim were directly opposed to this lifestyle. No, there is accountability in this world. You are responsible there. You don't have to be attached to all the things in this world. שאף היא מן המידות התרומיות שנבערן לך בפרק הבא. And abstinence is also a lofty trait that we will explain properly in the next chapter. ככל הדרוש לתכלית ספרנו. As we do in the rest of our
This is a
book.
Christian concept.
No,
Abstinence, you mean? As a Christian concept? Or
Abstinent.
abstinence. You see, I mentioned this last week.
so what would you go
Did the
like,
Christians borrow the
Jews,
concept then?
Jews,
But the idea of what, like a priest is abstinent because he
Yeah.
doesn't marry.
No,
is
he's
that what you're
celibate. He's celibate.
celibate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a type. Is it a type of abstinence or
No.
not
A
according to the
Talmid
Torah?
Chacham would be abstinent. For example, Shulchan Aruch says, the Talmid Chacham, שלא יהיו תלמידי חכמים מצויים אצל נשותיהן כתרנגולין. The Torah scholars should not be found always cohabiting with their wives like
Like a
chickens.
rooster,
Yeah, like a rooster.
as
Rather.
Rambam says.
Rather, shishi the shishi from Friday to Friday or from whenever there's a need, but not like people on the street would do. That's abstinence. But by the way, that abstinence happens on both of those people's part. So that's why the Eshel Chacham, the wife of the Chacham, she's also part of the. When a Eshel Chacham, the wife of a Talmid Chacham, walks into the room, we stand up for her, because the assumption is that they're not just respectful to her husband, but she's an active partner in whichever way in the levels of which she's attempting to attain. So right, celibacy. We think abstinence. We think a Catholic priest being celibate, and from our record, Catholic priests are not so great at being celibate, anyways.
That's for sure.
So here we're not talking about that. Now, when it comes to Christianity, it sounds like a Christian concept. Jews have always had Talmidei Chachamim. In this generation, you have Talmidei Chachamim, and you have rabbis. Two different concepts. You have many people who are called rabbis who are not Talmidei Chachamim. It's a sad thing. I don't know how it happened. I'm not purporting myself to be Talmid Chacham, but Definitely, I know people who are Talmidei Chachamim, and the difference between the two was glaringly obvious. I told you last week that there was a class in a synagogue locally in San Diego to give a class on the how consumerism is a Torah value. That was the topic of the class. That was
Sounds
given
like
here.
that guy in the floods in Houston.
I don't.
Osteen guy who wouldn't open his
So
church.
this idea of consumerism is Jewish value. And now we're in America, democracy is a Jewish value. We're here in this society, capitalism is a Jewish value. Jews have always had Talmidei Chachamim that we're not afraid. If you pull up a chair, Angel, either you scoot towards Marlene or towards Mario, we put another chair now. And Talmidei Chachamim are people who are pushing. They were not afraid to stand up against the time, to say, it's not popular to tell you, but in Judaism we believe that not all the money that you make is yours. Yeah, we're not afraid to tell you that. A rabbi who his purpose is, I don't want to lose a congregant, I don't want to upset my donor, I don't want the president of the board to get mad at me, so what do? I say all kinds of things that are not accurate, and I pass them off with my very limited Torah knowledge to sound like a Torah value. You are plagued with such a generation. And therefore, a rabbi will come to his community, Hashem wants you to indulge, he wants you to be... How many times have I heard these speeches? And there's truth to that. There is truth. And the Gemara tells us that everything you don't enjoy in this world, Hashem will judge us for. And that I gave you this and you didn't... I gave you a strawberry, a fresh strawberry, if you didn't taste it. Hashem says that's a problem. But there's a limit to everything that...
And the Nazareth was where?
The Nazir, very good. A Nazir is an extreme form of abstinence, in which way sometimes he can be a holy person, but sometimes you can also, every Nazir has to bring a chatat offering. In this generation, you have some...
The Nazir is, that's just generally temporary, right? Only for a period of
It's
time.
supposed to be temporary. The problem is, without a temple, a person cannot get rid of his Nazir status. There are some stupid people, I'm going to say this because I don't care who you know that's like this. In this generation, they've decided to become Nazirim. And most of them, when they became Nazirim, they knew as much about Torah as your shoe, and they decided they want to be a Nazir. There's nothing holy today about being a Nazir.
There's no Beit HaMikdash.
There's no Beit HaMikdash. This whole approach, it's not correct. It's incorrect. And those who did it, I don't know. I don't care. It's not correct.
We talked about it before, where like the offering that they even brought was a sin offering because
Correct.
he was so abstinent, and
Correct.
it's not necessarily a good thing to be abstinent like that.
Very good. That's the truth. In Gemara Masechet Sotah, there was a rabbi who saw a Nazir and he spoke to him. He was really the Shem Shamayim. It was for the sake of heaven and Nazir. He said, if all Nazirim were like you, I would be okay with Nazirim. But they're not. So that's the...
It turns into like an egotistical type thing.
Correct.
after a
Look how
while.
holy I am.
Because I don't do what you do. Because I
There are
don't.
few people, even that are very famous, that you know of. I'm not talking about anybody who's dead. People who are alive today. That place, we don't need them, nor their abstinence. So the reason, because abstinence, we hear, oh, that's a Christian thing. Because we've had so many rabbis that have pumped into our heads all kinds of concepts that are not, they're not accurate. Yes, the Torah demands from us to enjoy this world. No, the Torah does not allow us to become gluttonous and indulge in this world the way other people do. The Torah is always, if you want to know any character trait of the Torah, you can guess, is not going to be in any extreme. The Torah is going to be balanced. Somewhere in the middle of any two opinions that you hear, the Torah is going to be somewhere around there. Even the things that you think the Torah is extreme about, such as not worshipping idols, the Torah is not extreme about. The Torah is balanced about. In the words of the Rambam, animal sacrifices were an idolatrous custom that Hashem felt he could not wean us off.
How they
Overnight.
come up with the human sacrifice?
And then, what?
From animal sacrifice to human sacrifice.
No, we don't sacrifice humans, not in this religion.
So,
I mean,
are you saying like originally animal sacrifice came to replace human sacrifice?
Oh, okay,
in some cultures, but then
But Jews were so involved. How could I worship God without killing goats for him? So the Rambam says Hashem realizes that overnight he could take the Jews out of Egypt. Overnight he can change, but he can't change their mentality overnight. But it's for this reason you should know that Hashem spends 40 years with us in the desert. Hashem needed a whole new generation of people to be born who were not born in Egypt, who were not born in what you would call slave mode, to be able to enter the land of Israel as warriors, as people who are not afraid, as people who believe this land belongs to them. As much as you would like, you could not overnight change people who were slaves yesterday and turn them tomorrow into leaders, into generals, into warriors. It doesn't work.
They had slave mentality.
And therefore Hashem, we had to wean, but that happens gradually. The same thing with animal sacrifice, says the Rambam. It's for this reason that you'll find so often in the prophets that our prophets tell us, I don't need your animals. I don't need your fat. I don't need your blood. I need your hearts. This is only a side thing that I allowed you to do. Now the Rambam gets in big trouble for saying this. The Kabbalists obviously disagree with the Rambam entirely. They say, how could you say something that the Torah spends so much emphasis on, the animal sacrifices, how could you say that they don't mean anything aside from... Okay, I'm not here to stick my head in that hole. What I mean to say is that even there, Hashem says there are things that technically were idolatrous, that Hashem allowed us to retain because we were not able to reach that pure level of connection to Hashem without it. Remember we studying in the Kuzari? Even the concept of a synagogue, of a Torah, kissing a book, and having a holier place than other places, that's not, God forbid, idol worship, but it's also not the purest form of belief in one Hashem. Why should this room be any holier than the next room? The reality is that we are limited in our ability to serve Hashem without certain external things. And therefore we need a Torah to be able to kiss. We need a place that we go to pray. But we should be aware that that's a balance. There's an extreme of, I don't need anywhere to pray. I could meditate on my own mountaintop. There's that, I need to be in a temple, and I need gold, and I need... So Hashem, there's some kind of balance here. It's a Bet Knesset. It's a middle ground. But everything in the world, Hashem demands from us to be balanced on. And that perhaps, even when it comes to abstinence, there's a balance that goes into this abstinence.
Well, it's the difference between sipping the world and greedily consuming the world. Like you said, one strawberry. Do you have to eat a whole box?
Correct. Does it have to be the whole pan of the strawberry shortcake? I mean, this is the question. Where is the limit? Where is the place in which I say, I balanced, Hashem, I tasted. Thank you very much.
Most people don't do that.
Most people don't do that. Why? Because we have people pushing for either extreme, but not for balance. Yeah, they were HaShamayim, they were able, they come to the house, they listen to classical music. But you say, oh, he didn't spend his whole life listening to music. He also didn't spend his whole life studying Torah. He spent his whole life being a balanced person. We are so often caught in extremes that the way you fight extremes is by going to another extreme. Somebody who is extremely angry has to work on being extremely calm in order to end up being extremely normal. But battling extremes with extremes only works when you're sick, when you have a problem. If you don't have a problem, don't take a medication. If you don't have a problem with anger, don't practice extreme calm. Practice balance. And that's how it works with all the midot of the Torah. Let me just read to you the last few words here. And in a certain way, abstinence comes, contentment comes from abstinence. This is what he says here. כי המסתפק הוא מי שאיננו מצטער על מה שלא ישיג מכינוני העולם הזה, ושמח בחלקו הניתן לו. A contented person is not disturbed. Contented, who says? A content person?
A content.
Content or contempt.
Contented is right?
Yeah.
Contented?
Be
You would say a
contented.
contented person?
Yeah.
You could say both.
You
A
could.
person who is content.
You could. It's a little awkward.
A contented person is not disturbed by all he has not attained of this world, but appreciates whatever does come to him. The person who's content, it's not because he has everything. He just doesn't focus on what he doesn't have, and he focuses on what he does have. נמצא איפה שהפורש מענייני העולם מחייבתו פרישותו למידת הסתפקות. So it comes out in some strange way, the one who separates from this world will inevitably have to reach contentment. וכל בעל פרישות הוא איפה בעל הסתפקות, and therefore every abstinent person will essentially end up being a content person. Because if he doesn't desire the things in this world, then he won't be upset about what he doesn't have, and he'll be happy with whatever he does have. But לא כל בעל הסתפקות הוא בעל פרישות. Not every person who is content is an abstinent person. It's not a two-way street. A equals B, and B equals C, but A doesn't equal C. If I'm doing my math correctly.
So,
It's
but,
not the same.
But you're saying that somebody who's abstinent will be content. and that's not really true, I don't think, because you could think you're not abstinent enough, and you're not
You're saying
content.
your lack of abstinence is going to affect your contentment.
Yeah.
Very good. It seems here that the whole practice of abstinence is not focusing on what I don't have. And that's what he means when he says abstinence.
Beautifully put.
Yeah.
And therefore, that kind of person is not truly abstinent.
Yeah.
And therefore, he was not content.
It's again a very fine balance thing.
Absolutely. It reminds me of just in a very, not spiritual way. The Kehillat suggests that if a person has a certain amount of money and he wants to buy either a house or a store, what should he buy? A house or a store?
Door.
He says buy a store. Because a store will buy you a house, but a house will never buy you a store.
Because these days,
Okay, these days, all kinds of things change, I'm aware. But in general, a person has to know not everything that brings me. Life has steps, and sometimes those steps don't go two directions. Or sometimes they're one-way streets, and a person has to make those decisions. What am I investing my time in, my energy in? If I'm investing in abstinence, I will inevitably reach contentment. But if I just focus on contentment, I may never reach that level of abstinence. Now that may be where I'm at. That could be where I'm going to stay. But we have to have that conversation with ourselves. Next week we'll talk about, is contentment really an objective of the Torah? And when we finish this chapter, it really goes on to abstinence, which we may continue on to abstinence, or we may go back to reliance, but we'll play that by ear.
I thought you might be interested in seeing this. This is happening.